Here we are, John. I'm wearing a hat. It's not that cold today, but tomorrow, for those of you that have never been to Montana, it's going to be 30 below zero Fahrenheit.
Lucky you, it's not quite as cold that in Bakewell. It's quite cold enough for our uninsulated houses and not such warm clothes as you have. You can see I'm wearing my thickest woolies.
I'm always colder in Bakewell than I'm here. I think there's a lot more moisture in the air.
Oh, yes, it's damn, damn, damn cold. The houses aren't nothing. You see, you wear much less clothes with you wear much less clothes at 30 minus 30 degrees than I wear at not even
Zero.
two. Of course, my heating is only just beyond tepid. I suppose yours is hot. I'm sure it is.
No, it's not hot.
Your hot house must be warmer, better insulated, I'm sure. Anyway.
Anyway, now that we got that out of the way. So I'm kind of sad. Look, we're almost at the end, John. And
Yes.
um, chapter 35 of All Fulfilled, and we just talked about this a little bit, so I thought maybe you could expand on it. You write, some readers may turn to these last pages, read and think, I know it all already,
Mm.
which I assume, of course, we don't, but I know the more I learn, the less I know is what I'm figuring out. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about experience, someone's own experience.
Well, this week has been what I call a visitor week. Well, and there were a couple of young women with me yesterday. And because one of them, a Romanian girl, actually had some experience with sheep, and I love sheep and used to work with them, I invited her to come to the local cattle market. Well, Bakewell, this little town where I live, is one of the largest cattle and sheep markets in the country, with thousands of animals sold there every week. So I took these girls along, and we wandered up and down the pens of all these sheep. Where, of course, you got many hundreds, thousands of lovely 6-month-old, bit older lambs that are going to be slaughtered. Well, it's upsetting. And of course, the girl started crying. One of them did, and then the other joined, and I had crying myself. I feel deeply about these things. Look at these hardly unbelievably beautiful creatures straight off the hills and the fields, penned in these metal and concrete pens. They've had a long journey on the lorry. They haven't had any, they're taken off their accustomed grass in a strange new world. But, well, we were thinking, these girls and me, well, why? 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 What's the cause of all this? Because when you really think about it, you come to realize that the cause is me. Man requires food. Even if you're a vegan, well, most people eat meat, and so the whole sheep business is there. We need wool, we need sheepskins, we need all sorts of other animal products. And sheep and cattle are produced, killed. This is to feed man. Well, we have to take this, sooner or later, if you're serious about spiritual work, you have to take on the consequences of why we have appetites, why we are in bodies that are themselves condemned to die, and why all these creatures, not only the creatures, but the vegetables and the fruit that we consume, are similarly condemned to death. As God says in the beginning of the Bible, when man falls out of paradise, cursed is the land for thy sake. Yes, indeed it is. And some people are beginning to realize it now as they think of man's effects on the environment. Well, there it was. It was a very instructive morning for us. There in the sheep pens, we've been really developing the theme today. What is man indeed? Why are we encased in this body of death and inflicting death on all around us? Why, as I keep saying, why can't we be like fairies and just dance over the grass without hurting it, and presumably don't have to kill lovely lambs in order to live? Why indeed? Well, maybe we can. Maybe this is the end of what we call spiritual work, to come back to our original and proper destiny of spirit and rediscover, first of all, immortality, and then there's no need to kill and eat other creatures, because in spirit this doesn't happen. In spirit you are complete. We don't have hungry tummies to fill. And this chapter is really development of prayer, we talked about last week. What is prayer and how does it work? Because prayer is really the raising of consciousness to a point where you transcend this world of death and you recognize the world of no death, of immortality, which applies, of course, not only to man, but to the creatures, to lambs. And at least in the recognition of that immortal realm, there is hope for all below. In fact, the whole of this world of death is slackened. It isn't such an absolute, it isn't such an absolute totality as it sometimes seems. It begins to sort of fray at the edges a bit, not quite as real as it seems to be. Rather like a dream when you wake up. Are those lambs really going to be killed? Well, outwardly in appearance, so it seems. But what about this eternal presence? This infinite realm of no death. Death and no death. Mortality, immortality. Temporal, time, space. I've only got another few more years to live. Maybe I'll die tomorrow. Ha ha ha. Of course I won't die. I'm this. You see? And this is really the whole work in a nutshell. Are we going to be this or this? Well, you may feel there's no choice. We're this. We're sort of stuck down here. But keep working, my dears. Start to pray. You'll soon discover that prayer is reaching up into this. And if you keep reaching up into this, it'll become easier and easier, and gradually it becomes more real. And one day it'll become more real to you than locked into this world of death down here. Try it and see. You'll have to try it for yourself. It's no good just saying, oh, this old man says so. Do it, learn for yourself. Then you'll know, as surely as I do. I couldn't talk with the conviction I do like this unless it was real for me. And God willing, it'll be real for you one day. Then you'll really find what the purpose of prayer is, and that prayer is the greatest work in this world, because doctors will never stop people dying. You die, you cure one disease and die of something else tomorrow. But this is the real cure for human ills. This is the salvation of the soul. If you don't do it for the love of humanity, do it for the love of the lambs. It's like what I did as a farmer. I did it for the love of my animals. I can see you're making notes in the book.
I was just highlighting this sentence where you write, it's no use trying to save the world when we ourselves are the cause of the trouble. It's we that need salvation.
Exactly. That's just what I've just said, isn't it? Yeah.
So John, I guess it's a personal question. What about the suffering? So the death of the sheep or the death of someone you care about deeply. I can connect to what you're saying deeply, but what about the suffering?
Well, when Jesus heard of the death of his friend Lazarus, it's recorded that he wept. As he stood above Jerusalem before he went down to his crucifixion, he said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem." I can't quote it correctly. Thou that murdereth the prophets or something. I wish I could gather you together as a hen gathers her chickens under her wings, but you would not let me. Oh, suffering indeed. We do suffer. We grieve for the death and the death of those things we love. It is tragic. Sin is the consequence of sin is tragic, my dears. This world is a veil of tears, so hiding the fact. But the hope is that in spirit you realize the existence of a greater life that is not subject to death. And there is the hope, both for yourself as the observer and the creatures that you observe. Called the work of salvation, salvation from suffering and death. And I record many realizations in this chapter of in the early years when I was beginning to realize this. And it was all new and vivid enough for me to write it down as it's recorded here. And again, as I said last week, I suppose the 30 odd years since I wrote this book, I've been putting it into practice ever more and more. So now it's become not just a sort of momentary realization, but virtually my daily life experience, one's continuous daily life experience.
John, you write, when self, with a capital S, is realized, one's previous condition of non-realization is recognized as ignorance.
That's right, yes, it is.
Do you meet a lot of people that you would say are realized?
Oh, no, dear, I don't think I've ever met anybody. No, no, I wouldn't claim that myself, not fully, partially at times, maybe. No, I don't know anybody who's, I've never met anyone directly who's fully realized themselves. I suppose there are a few, but I've never met them. I'm not sure that the ones most in the public eye are necessarily spiritually most advanced at all. There've always been those, not everybody that reaches spiritual heights seeks publicity, because once you start working with spirit, there's no need really to have an audience. The spirit doesn't need a public acclaim. It works unseen, unknown. It's the real behind the scenes, the invisible power behind the scenes, the power behind the throne. See, it's the unseen, unknown energy that keeps the world going. It's life, the life force. Who's ever seen the life force? It's recognized by its effects, isn't it? By the fact that there's a seed sprouts. Who's ever seen electricity? Nobody knows really what electricity is, do they? How could we live without it? Spirit's rather similar.
Find it difficult. So many people are looking for a teacher or a realized person in the world, traveling all over the world. And, you see so much on the internet around that, but it seems difficult.
Let me tell you, see what we went for a walk this afternoon. There was another man joined us. There were four of us, two girls, this man, myself. And we were thinking about these sheep, you see, and we were all brought to tears looking at them. And, well, there's that lovely phrase in the Bible that John the Baptist describes Jesus as, "Behold the Lamb of God." And they're very, very important words. That takes away the sin of the world. Now, what does that really mean? The Lamb of God. Well, many years ago, as a young farmer, when my first lambs were born, as I've often described, on a snowy April morning, early one dawn, I looked at these little creatures flopping about on the snowy ground, and the Lamb of God came to my mind, and I never doubted it. What is there about lambs that takes away our sins? Well, you could say their sweet innocence, but there's something more about it, I thought today. Why did these creatures make us cry? Well, because they melt our heart. The very sight of these sweet and lovely things, they melt our heart. This hard crust that surround our hearts, our heart. And when the heart is melted, what comes out of it? Love. Love just flows, doesn't it? Pure, simple love. Without qualification. No, I love you. Just pure love. Like sunshine. Love sunshine. It shines on everything. Now then, what does love see? Love sees perfection in the beloved. Love sees no ill, does it? Love sees nothing but loveliness. Pure love sees purity. The pure in heart see God. and sin is as though it never was. Sin just melts away. Lamb of God, it takes away the sins of the world. There's no need to go to India to look for gurus, my friends. If you look at the Lamb, let your heart be melted. Let your tears run and wash your soul, and you'll be as close to God as you'll ever be. You don't need a teacher. The teacher is in front of your nose. If you haven't got a lamb to look at a dog. Look into a dog's eyes.
One other sentence that really stood out, John, is my entire life has expressed not what I am, but what I am not. Searching, working, trying to understand, as blind and busy as a mole.
Yes, I'd been watching moles, thinking about moles, those little creatures that burrow in the ground, live underground, digging their little tunnels all day long, live eating worms, getting gardeners upset because they like gardens, they like the rich, friable soil of a garden and drive gardeners mad. Nobody's ever found a way to control them, I don't think. Anyway, mold, or how human people are like mold rather like worms, aren't we? Even if we're exposed to the light, we choose to burrow down into the darkness again. We don't like the light. Strange creatures, aren't we? We love darkness. Just wallow in filth, violence, and awful things. God, look at what's available on the media. We just love these dreadful things. Search in vain for the true, the good, and the beautiful. You don't find it among man. Not very much. Yeah, indeed.
I was just thinking, as we've gone through this book, it really feels like in these last two chapters, I don't know where you were in your life, but prayer really became a lot deeper.
Yes, to start off, we make some appeal to God. God help, God bring peace to the walls or something. But well, peace is quite a good example. People pray for peace, but actually, once you begin to discover stillness, or indeed just silence, you realize this is peace. And where does peace come from? Does it come from international conferences and all that sort of thing, or a lot of money being spent on armaments or something, or disarmament or whatever? Or does it just come from finding peace in our hearts, from finding the peace, this eternal presence, which is so obvious? I mean, you may know I love saying, keep your feet on the ground. Well, the ground is still. No matter how many bombs are falling all around, the ground is at peace, isn't it? The earth is perfectly still. The rocks are still. So if you want to be still, all you've got to do is just feel your feet on Mother Earth, on the ground. Let that stillness pervade you. Of course, then the mind, of course, loves to keep its own restlessness going. But we're determined not to be at peace. But if you're lucky enough to have a good method of meditation, you may find that peace gradually becomes a fact of experience, an obvious fact. One of the most first sort of steps in spiritual realization is this recognition of the ever-present stillness. Well, then you are peaceful, aren't you? And where does peace come from if not from peaceful those who find peace? those who are peaceful. It just flows out of you, doesn't it? Naturally. Everybody recognizes somebody that's peaceful. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to be a teacher. You just be at peace and you'll find that it's has an effect. I was talking to a chap, this man who was with us today, talking about his children. I was saying, do they support your interest in meditation? No, of course they don't, he said. Families often don't, but he said they can't not notice the fact that I'm at peace. Even though he's got 4 children, mostly in their sort of teenagers. So it has its effect, my dears. If you want to bring the world to peace, start off with yourself. You may be surprised. And that's really the essence of prayer. That if you want to heal yourself. Again, the old saying, physician, heal thyself. Find your own spiritual wholeness. And no matter, even if your body is rotting away with some terrible disease, it doesn't really matter very much, because the body's only the body. It's like an old car, it's breaking down. But you see, this spiritual part of you is indestructible. No disease touches that. Doesn't matter how diseased the body is. This higher spiritual part of you is as I say, it's whole, complete, and perfect. It's immortal and it's indestructible, incorruptible. This world of sin, its destiny is to rot away. It's what sin is. Sin is death. Humanity is on death row. The only destiny of humanity is death. People fool themselves thinking life's going on forever. Of course it isn't. When you're young and beautiful, prancing around, doing marvelous exercises on the beach and that. Oh, my dears, wait a few years. Spring doesn't last forever. Wait till you get to my age. You'll remember I met a lovely young man today, a great big muscle man, I'm a farmer, just at that stage of life when you can do everything. Aha. And, yes, how long does it last for? This life is a temporary phenomenon of a very limited duration. Real life is in spirit. If you're serious about helping yourself, or even better, helping others, work for spirit, then you'll find that that's putting prayer into practice. Otherwise, prayer just stays in words. Words may or may not have an effect, but you practice what you preach. Find that wholeness in yourself, and then wholeness will radiate out from you. To make whole, be whole, which is another of my favorite slogans. That's prayer. That really is prayer. Real prayer. Yes, I was very impressed when I first went to Russia and realized how in Russian churches, when someone dies, the normal practice is for the coffin to be put open, of course, in the church. By the way, they always they try to bury the body on the 3rd day, to sort of follow the example of Jesus. But for 3 days before the coffin is put in the grave, they don't put the lid on, so the coffin is lying open, so children, you can go in and touch the corpse. So everybody, from the children upwards, they become familiar with the fact of death, that their friend who they saw walking around and talking to them last week, is there lying in his box, cold and a cold corpse. Well, a very salutary, good lesson, isn't it? To see what happens to us. That any day we may be like that. So it's worth thinking about, isn't it? Like the lesson with those sheep. What is this life if that's how it ends? Do you want to be like that? Well, it will happen to us. All the body will die. But what about this thing we call the soul? See, that's the important bit. The bit that if we've done our spiritual work, God willing, may continue, if that's what we want. Yes, in Orthodox countries, the lid isn't put on the coffin until it's actually put in the grave, just before they cover it with earth. So all the way through, then everyone can look at the faces of the deceased and reflect on their own mortality. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Brother, consider you are going to die. I'm full of death today, aren't I? But to me, one has to take this subject on board if we're serious about spiritual work, serious about anything really in this life. We're incredibly stupid, really. In the West these days, we think we're so clever, and actually we've completely turned away from the real point of life. This worship of the body, of humanism, and completely missed out the true destiny of man, which is spirit, which is heaven, the kingdom of heaven.